This is Matthew Meade, and this is my final case study presentation for sustainable development and construction. The project that I chose was One Bryant Park. One Bryant Park is a 55-story, 1,200-foot tall LEED Platinum skyscraper. It's located in New York City, right in the middle of Midtown, between 42nd and 43rd Streets. The development was constructed between 2004 and 2009. The initial planning phases were in 2002. The project had an estimated cost of $1 billion, and it was constructed by Tishman, with the Durst organization being the owner and developer. The construction costs are not public, but it is estimated that the costs were closer to $1.1 billion. A quick executive summary of the project. The project has 55 stories, approximately 2.1 million square feet. It's a very large building. It cost, as I said, about $1 billion to build, which is around $476 a square foot, and that's not including any tenant fit-up work. That's just core and shell construction. The project has some very high sustainability goals, being the fact that it was the first LEED Platinum skyscraper in the United States. The strict requirements for LEED Platinum make this project one that was never done before, so it was a project that was revolutionary. The project architect was Cook Fox Architects. Servand Associates served as the primary engineer, and the lender for the project was primarily Bank of America, with multiple other smaller loans, which we'll get to a little later on. So with One Bryant Park being a LEED Platinum building, there were quite a few sustainable design impacts when it was being developed. So some of the functions that the building has is reclamation of stormwater, on-site cogeneration, it has green roof, extensive indoor air quality monitoring, thermal control, and all of the underfloor air conditioning is through a raised floor system. It's also noteworthy to bring up that the building uses waterless urinals, and it's estimated that they save 3 million gallons of water a year. Floor-to-ceiling windows, as I said earlier, allow vast amounts of natural light into the space, and the building was actually used 35% of the product was recycled material. So the sustainability of the project is quite high, given the fact that they needed to meet the LEED Platinum designation. So one of the complexities with One Bryant Park is that it's located in possibly the most dense real estate in the United States. It's in the middle of Midtown Manhattan. So some development site considerations that needed to be completed in order to achieve the LEED Platinum was a new glass enclosed subway entrance at 42nd Street, expanded public circulation space, and an urban garden room at the 43rd Street entrance. There's a few critics who believe that the building shouldn't have actually achieved the LEED Platinum status because it was mainly focused on not only the building but also on some site work, and there was quite a few points that were picked up for things that many would consider not building features, but examples would be hiring a LEED professional, being near mass transportation, which given where the site is, it's the mecca of mass transportation, and restoring a piece of Bryant Park. The negative perceptions of One Bryant Park, however, are generally by people who are not involved with the building or work in the building. The general overall sentiment from those who work in the building and are involved in it is actually a very positive sentiment. So sustainable construction practices start obviously with your contractor and go from there during the construction. Tishman was hired by Durst and was involved basically from the start of the project. Durst hired Tishman mainly because Tishman is one of the largest contractors in New York City. And with the reputation that they have, it was pretty much a no-brainer for Durst and Bank of America to use Tishman to create a one-of-a-kind building that had never been built before. Jody Durst was actually quoted, as it says here, saying that One Bryant Park is the most complex building we have ever built, and Tishman's commitment to innovation, embrace of environmentally responsible construction practices make them the perfect partner. So part of Tishman's responsibility on the project, besides running the construction project, is to actually monitor all of the events that will come up throughout the whole process, any questions, any considerations, any value engineering that may need to be done on the project. Having the contractor in these meetings and aware of these discussions is critical, because they're the ones who are ultimately on the ground building the building and understanding everything that's going on day to day. So the little graphic here actually shows that in an ideal world with value engineering, you want to have a low cost building but at a very high value. You don't want to ever have a high cost building at a low value. You want to be able to optimize your dollar and have it go as far as possible in the construction process. So just elaborating a little bit on some of the features of the building that exist. The cogeneration plant, as we discussed, it actually provides 65% of the building's electricity per year. That's quite a good amount, given the fact that One Bryant Park actually uses quite a bit of electric, that it has 11,000 employees and 2.1 million square feet of office space. So not only does the cogen plant produce heat in the summer months, but it also keeps the building cool by using a byproduct of steam and running that over chilled water. It's a very in-depth system and quite unique. The indoor air system utilizes the underfloor ventilation, as we talked about earlier, and if this graphic here shows a raised floor with that setup, and all of the floor vents are individually adjustable per person so that all of the occupants are comfortable. There's a air filtration system in the building that removes 95% of the particulates in the air, and the most unique thing that I found about the way that the air is actually brought into the building is it's not brought in from street level. It's actually brought into the building from 800 feet above the ground, so that the air is actually cleaner than the air that's on the ground level. Very interesting. So as I mentioned earlier, One Bryant Park was revolutionary in its design, and the sustainability plan that came with that was unlike any other plan that has been seen before. Looking at it today, 2019, you could maybe argue that less glass could have been used so that the building holds its temperature better. You could also argue that some of the materials could have been upgraded, because technology's just taken things further in 10 years than they were when this building was complete in 2009. But for the time that this building was built and everyone who was involved, it really was like unbelievably ahead of its time. So leading into federal, state, and local mandates and code analysis, I have a picture here of Barack Obama, because the federal mandates did not apply, or incentives for that matter, apply to One Bryant Park. They came after. So when Obama signed the stimulus package, that was in 2009, the building was already constructed. So later projects were able to take advantage of some of those benefits, such as different types of loans and other incentives to keep construction going. But in the case of One Bryant Park, no federal money was had. The main incentive came from the state of New York. $947,000 were given from the New York State Energy Research and Development Authority, mainly for the building achieving the LEED Platinum status, being a skyscraper. While the number seems small, it's less than 0.1% of the project cost, it was pretty much granted to Durst with the plans that they already had. So there was no real impact on the project, where in some other instances, if you're developing a project and you'd like to receive incentives, you would probably have to modify your plans. But in this case, it was basically free money for Durst to take advantage of, because their design was already so efficient. So as I've said a couple times in this presentation, the building was really ahead of its time. So much so that when the building was being built, New York City itself did not really have any mandates or incentives for similar structures. Upon seeing the building built in 2009, New York City passed its Greater Greener Buildings Plan that Mayor Bloomberg was thinking about since 2007 and structuring. And the plan, truthfully, it's probably the most expensive plan in the country regarding infrastructure, and its sole focus is really to create more sustainable construction in New York City. It focuses not only on commercial development, but also on the city's transportation, lands and parks, housing, energy, air quality, and water supply. It doesn't only target new construction either, it also targets any modifications to existing construction, and it is quite an extensive plan. So, in a more recent revelation in New York City, there's a fresh law that's been passed, 1253-2018. It pretty much is the Green Deal for New York City. Everyone talks about, the Green New Deal and all of the restrictions and goals that sets forward. So New York City kind of just put their own version of this into law. And the ironic part of it is that it's mainly focused around greenhouse gases, which One Bryant Park produces quite a few greenhouse gases given its size with over 11,000 employees. So ironically, the probably most sustainable building by definition of sustainability in New York City, given the electricity use and greenhouse gases that it emits, would actually, under this law, be fined approximately $2.5 million a year. So I think it was one of these laws that had good intentions, but the delivery may not have been as efficient. Jumping into life cycle cost analysis, just again, the building cost just north of $1 billion in 2009. If you took it into 2019 money, it would be the equivalent of around a $1.2 billion project being built today. None of the information on the building is public regarding what costs were incurred on certain items, but we can certainly make some assumptions. So just on the cogeneration plant, natural gas power plant is approximately $5,000 per kilowatt, which equates to about $25 million in upfront spend for the power generation plant to be inside of One Bryant Park. However, there's probably a lot more involved in this particular plant because of the way that the energy is harvested and then actually reused with the ice chilling system and the HVAC. So I would actually peg the estimate more at about $50 million for the entire power generation system on the building. One of the other functions, as we've talked about, is the building has a raised floor system. While the raised floor system sounds like a great idea, and it is an expensive proposition. It's approximately $19 a square foot more, and over 2.1 million square feet. That adds up pretty quickly. It's almost $40 million to have this feature in the building. So in general, a LEED Platinum building carries usually about a 6.5–7% premium over traditional construction. However, One Bryant Park was kind of the first of its kind in being that it's the first LEED Platinum skyscraper. It also went way above and beyond on cogeneration and water filtration, and there's quite a few areas where One Bryant Park splurged. I would say that the delta is actually probably closer to 11%, which would mean that the premium for going with the LEED Platinum design is somewhere between $110 to $140 million. Just touching back on the cogeneration plant real quick because I have a graphic on the next page. Cogeneration plant, after 25 years in service, will recover over $78 million in energy savings, assuming a 65% recovery rate on approximately $1.80 a square foot in electrical use, and I put in 2% increases. So this $78 million, even discounted at 5% over the term, equates to $42 million on a $50 million upfront investment. So the cogen plant actually almost pays for itself after 25 years, even at a discount rate. So this is the graphic that I was discussing, the $50 million upfront cost, the annual savings on electric estimated at $3.7 million. I did 2% increases a year because generally electric bills go up. then the estimated yearly production from the cogen plant, and then I amortized it over 25 years. I did the net present value discount at 5%, and it comes up with no discount, $78 million cash on cash, $42 million at the discount rate. So on a $50 million investment, it's not a terrible turnaround. So moving into risk management analysis, being a construction and project manager myself, I'm fairly aware of all of the things that can come up on a construction project that can either cause problems with schedule or costs or delay or exposure to risks that you cannot even imagine because there's so many opportunities. So once the construction has started, the project manager is basically responsible for monitoring and mitigating against financial cost overruns, change orders, job site safety, any legal issues with contractors or vendors, and just day-to-day smooth running of the job. One example that came up at One Bryant Park that became an issue was things kept falling off the building. Pieces of glass fell off the building, other construction debris fell off the building. I just show a graphic here of a panel that fell 50 stories onto the ground, and obviously when something's falling 50 stories to the ground in the middle of New York City, hopefully no one gets hit with it. And luckily on this project, the 2 times that it did happen, everyone was okay. So regarding the investment environment analysis, it's actually an interesting time to build a building. 2004, everyone was on top of the world, money was cheap, anyone could get a loan. 2009, when the building was complete, not so much. So Bank of America was the lender, but they were also the primary tenant in the building, which helped, and I'm sure really made this easier on Durst than it would be if somebody didn't have such a credited tenant. But the primary form of financing from Bank of America was $650 million through loans. The total project cost was about $1 billion, but they ended up leveraging about $1.3 billion. It came through public construction bonds and through private, financing with the bank itself. Interestingly enough, BOA just refinanced the project with Durst for $1.6 billion. It's actually set to close yesterday. I haven't looked whether it did or not, but the new loan will combine $950 in a commercial-backed securities loan from the bank with $650 million in previous public-assisted financing. The extra $300 million will be available for Durst to actually remove from the project and keep as reserves. So they're finally going to be able to cash out some of their equity after 10 years. And BOA is actually cashing out some equity as well. So with sustainable development, there is now the Global Real Estate Sustainability Benchmark, which is a rating system that lenders are using and investors are using to figure out the sustainability of a certain project. And its consideration for environmental, social, and governance factors are at an all-time high in the development world. And instead of just investing in buildings where you get a good return, you want to be investing in buildings that meet certain guidelines that are, outside of just making money. And then the other part on here that I have would just be the new loan that BOA set with Durst is actually a 10-year interest-only loan at 3.25%. So the rates are actually pretty low, especially for a commercial loan like this. And the building was actually appraised for $3.5 billion. So the loan-to-value ratio is only around 45%. So just some conclusions here as I wrap it up. One Bryant Park is an absolutely stunning building. It is beautiful. It stands out in the city. For anyone who hasn't been to New York City and seen it, I would suggest that if you go to New York City, take a look at this building. It is amazing. I had a client who worked in the building, and I had to go there 5 or 6 times, and every time I went there, I was like, wow, I wish I worked here. So, these types of projects like One Bryant Park are what has really taken sustainable development to a whole new level, has set the standard for what's coming next, and has helped not only craft legislation around what should be done with sustainability, but also make it more of the norm that tenants and people in the market expect to be in a sustainable building. We are actually living at a quite exciting time, in my opinion, because we're kind of at a transition point where sustainability is going to become the new norm, or there's going to be resistance to it. And I'm quite excited to see how it plays out into the future. And projects like One Bryant Park are what made this all possible to set the bar so high. And that is my presentation on One Bryant Park. I had a great time in this class with everybody. I appreciate you guys watching this, and I look forward to speaking in the future and having more classes together.